Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all here to this very special event this evening. My name is Kate White and I'm the Director of Development and Alumni Relations for the University. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notices. We are not expecting the fire alarm, so if it does sound, then it is for real. There'll be staff on hand to direct you out of the exits and out of the building, should that happen. If I could ask people to make sure that phones are on silent, but please feel free for those that are tweeters to get involved on social media as well. Now, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce our President and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dame Nancy Rothwell.
Thank you, Kate, and I'm delighted to welcome staff, students, alumni, donors and friends of the university to this evening's event, which I think might turn out to be slightly different to our usual ones. It's great to see so many of you here. So we're very pleased to be acting as host to the UK tour of the Ig Nobel Awards. We're promised a light-hearted, fun and somewhat unconventional evening, brought to us by the team from Improbable Research, who runs the Ig Nobel Awards. These awards are about science that first makes us laugh and then make us think. And they've actually now got quite a status. I think it would be fair to say that when they began, they were a little looked down upon, and now it's quite something to be awarded an Ig Nobel. They are intended to celebrate the unusual, honour the imaginative, and spur people's interest in science, medicine and technology. And I can say as a scientist myself that a sense of humour is not always recognised in scientists. Hopefully you will see this evening that that's not always the case. This event encourages audience participation to a point. Please feel free to enter into the spirit of the occasion that's meant to be entertaining and humorous. Of course, we're particularly delighted that one of our speakers this evening is Sir Andre Geim from the University of Manchester. Andre is, of course, the only person ever to have received both the true Nobel Prize and the Ig Nobel Prize. In 2010, Andre was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for groundbreaking experiments regarding the two-dimensional material graphene. But it was actually 10 years before that he received his Ig Nobel Award for demonstrating the magnetic properties of water by scaling to levitate a small frog with magnets, as you will see. We're also joined by Elizabeth Obazaka and Kay Smolika. Elizabeth was awarded the Ig Nobel Prize in Maths for reporting the biological likelihood that the Emperor of Morocco fathered 800 sons. Elizabeth is a biologist and even evolutionary psychologist, and her research focuses on human behaviour and cognition. And in 2016, she joined the University of Ulm as Professor for Diversity, Adaptability and Equality. In 2017, she was elected Vice President of the International Society for Human Ethology. In 2003, Casey's publication about homosexual necrophilia in the mallard duck earned him the Ig Nobel Biology Prize. Case is European Bureau Chief of Annals of Improbable Research. He was born in the Netherlands, where he studied biology and geography and developed an interest in ornithology, I think not expecting of this nature quite. He was appointed Education Officer at the Natural History Museum in Rotterdam in 1989, and he still works at the museum, now as Chief Curator and Head of Communications. And then finally we'll hear from one of our alumni, Dr. Tom Williamson. Tom was invited to this event and then contacted us to ask if he could be involved, as he had contributed to Gordon Pennycook's 2016 Ig Nobel Prize winning paper. And Tom is the creator of the website, The Wisdom of Chopra, which uses an algorithm to generate quotes from a list of words that can be found on Deepak Chopra's Twitter stream, which is very extensive for any of you who follow it. And they are randomly stuck together in a sentence, I think by Tom rather than by Deepak Chopra. For those of you who don't know, Deepak Chopra is a prominent figure in the New Age movement, and through his videos and books, he's become one of the best known and wealthiest figures in alternative medicine. And I think Tim will allude to the fact that he's noted for his Twitter exchanges with our own Brian Cox. So now, let's proceed. Please let me introduce our compere for the evening, Mark Abrams, who I first met at the wonderfully successful Euroscience Open Forum, ESOF, held in the city last year. Mark is the editor and co-founder of the Annals of Improbable Research and the originator and master of ceremonies at the annual Ig Nobel Prize celebration. Mark, welcome.
Okay. Thank you. That is a box. No, that's not a box. I collect things, real things, that have an unusual quality. They first make people laugh and then think. And I give out prizes. Well, I run an organization of people who give out prizes for things that have the same quality, things that make people laugh and then think. Now, that quality may sound a little strange to you until you think about it. In science, most of the people in this room have some connection to science, some very intimate, some not quite so intimate, but everybody has some connection, I think. In science, in the whole history of science, almost everything that we're taught in every level of school, we're taught as a series of great discoveries by geniuses who knew exactly what they were doing, and everybody understood and appreciated right away how important and wonderful it was. And in fact, if you take the time to look at the history of almost anything in science, and if you have the chance to talk to the people involved, you'll almost always discover that's not the story at all. That at first, people usually get insulted, people make jokes about them, people may do a lot worse. And over time, some of these things come to be seen as important, and they're no longer remembered as being odd. They're just wonderful. And of course, the opposite happens. There are many things that get celebrated for years and years as being important and wonderful. And then eventually, it turns out everyone realizes there's nothing at all to them. So the fact that something makes people laugh and then think doesn't tell you anything at all by itself about whether that thing is good or bad. I'm going to first show you quickly 3 things that have won Ig Nobel Prizes, and then I'm going to quickly tell you about the most recent crop of Ig Nobel Prize winners. This is a picture of a penguin defecating. And if you're familiar with penguins, at least most varieties, you know that often when they defecate, they send out a long, long stream. We gave an Ig Nobel Prize to the scientists who calculated how much pressure must be inside a penguin in order for a penguin to be able to do this. We gave another Ig Nobel Prize one year to a team of scientists in Australia who published this report, which, as you can see, is called an analysis of the forces required to drag sheep across various surfaces. I'm not going to take the time to go into detail on any of these because I would be here all night. But you can easily go and find any of these and look up the detail for yourself. I hope you will. And we gave a prize back in the year 2000 to the authors of this study. As you can see, the title is Unskilled and Unaware of It: How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. Let me read that title for you again. Unskilled and Unaware of It: How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. All right, very quickly, here's the story of the Ig Nobel Prizes and improbable research. By improbable, we simply mean it's not what you expect. Everything that we gather for our magazine, which is called the Annals of Improbable Research, and especially everything that wins an Ig Nobel Prize, has this same quality I've already described to you, that it makes people laugh and then think. Your first reaction upon seeing it or hearing about it is, it's funny. It's just so far outside your experience, probably, that that alone makes it funny. But there's something about it that will stick in people's heads, so that a week later, most people still don't really want to do whatever they're supposed to be doing. They want to tell their friend about this thing and talk about it. So that's the quality that we look for in things. We give an Ig Nobel Prize. We give 10 of them every year for things that make people laugh and then think. These are all real things. We get about 9,000 or so nominations every year in a typical year. Reliably, between 10 and 20% of all the nominations that come in are people nominating themselves. The self-nominees almost never win. A few have, but it's very rare. And if you're trying to win an Ig Nobel Prize, and especially if that's the reason you set out to do something, you're almost certainly going to fail. This quality is almost impossible to manufacture intentionally. It just happens. And you should probably know that our policy in general, with a few exceptions, but in general, is that when we select somebody to win a prize, or we select a team to win a prize, we offer it to them quietly. We give them the opportunity to decline this great honor if they want. And happily for us, almost everyone who is offered a prize decides to accept. If we give you a prize, we offer it to you, and you accept, here's what you get. You get an Ig Nobel Prize. You're looking at this year's Ig Nobel Prize. It's a new design every year. They're always handmade from extremely cheap materials. You win a prize. You also get a piece of paper saying that you won an Ig Nobel Prize. And it's a nice piece of paper. It's signed by 3 Nobel laureates, real Nobel laureates. And there's a tradition that many of the winners take that piece of paper home, put it in a beautiful frame under glass, and hang it above their toilet. And we don't have any money, so we could never give cash, unlike most other prizes in the world, to the winners. Until a few years ago, we figured out a way that we could give a large cash prize to every winner. And now each winner, or at least each winning team, wins a tremendous amount of cash. They win $10 trillion. They win a $10 trillion bill from Zimbabwe. And the man responsible for creating these $10 trillion bills, Dr. Gideon Gano, who was head of the National Bank in Zimbabwe himself, was the recipient of an Ig Nobel Prize in mathematics for that achievement. The ceremony, you're invited to the ceremony if you win. You have to get yourself there, because we can't afford to fly you there, and you have to get yourself home. But it's probably worth coming to. It happens at Harvard University, inside the building you're seeing now. It's called Sanders Theater. It's the biggest meeting place at Harvard. It fits 1,100 people. It's the biggest classroom also. And it's jammed full on Ig Nobel night. We have been webcasting since 1995. We were almost the first thing of any kind to do any webcasting. And there's a tradition at the ceremony that the audience started very early on of bringing loads of paper and making paper airplanes, which they throw at the stage. And you are welcome to do that now here tonight if you want. I would urge you, as we urge the audience there, just keep in mind safety first. Don't aim to kill, that's all. Here, very quickly, is a look at the most recent crop of Ig Nobel Prize winners. The Ig Nobel Physics Prize was awarded to Marc-Antoine Fardin of France, Singapore, and the USA. He won the Physics Prize for using fluid dynamics to probe the question, can a cat be both a solid and a liquid? That's good. This is the paper that he published on that subject. It's called On the Rheology of Cats. And I'm going to show you now some images that are part of that published study. Here is the winner at the Ig Nobel ceremony. Each time, the winners are kept secret until they appear at that moment on stage. They come through a curtain, and there is a Nobel Prize winner waiting to shake their hand and hand them the Ig Nobel Prize. So this is Marc-Antoine Fardin on the left, being handed his Ig Nobel Prize by Eric Maskin, a Nobel Prize winner. And then he stepped over and gave his acceptance speech. They get about 1 minute. They get to talk longer than anybody else. And we have a way of helping each speaker finish on time. We have a very cute little 8-year-old girl. We recruit a new one pretty much every year. She sits at the side of the stage. I introduce her at the start of the night. I explain that whenever she feels that somebody has talked long enough, she'll let them know. The way she lets them know is that she will walk all the way across the stage, this cute little girl, up to whoever is speaking at the microphone, and she will look up at that person and say, "Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored." She doesn't stop until they do. And it works. Here is our physics prize winner finishing up his acceptance speech. The Ig Nobel Peace Prize this year was awarded to a team based mostly in Switzerland, but also partly in Canada, the Netherlands, and the USA. They were honored for demonstrating that regular playing of a didgeridoo is an effective treatment for sleep apnea and snoring. They published this paper about it. The paper is called "Didgeridoo Playing as an Alternative Treatment for Obstructive Sleep Apnea Syndrome, Randomized Controlled Trial." Here is an image from the study. And here are the winners finishing up their acceptance speech. The Ig Nobel Economics Prize this year was awarded to a team from Australia, mostly, for their experiments to see how contact with a live crocodile affects a person's willingness to gamble. This is their paper. It's called "Never Smile at a Crocodile. Betting on electric gaming machines is intensified by reptile-induced arousal." Here's some detail from that paper. This is one of the co-authors with the crocodile that was used in the study. And here they are at the ceremony giving their acceptance speech with a fake crocodile. We don't have a brief demonstration. Oh, I'm sorry, but we did at the ceremony. Right after this, that's another Nobel laureate sitting there. We asked him to come out and sit in the chair, which he kindly did, and then we brought out this box which says "Warning, Crocodile," and I won't tell you what happened after that. The Ig Nobel Anatomy Prize was awarded to Dr. James Heathcote of the UK for his medical research study called "Why Do Old Men Have Big Ears?" This is the study, published in the BMJ, British Medical Journal. And here's some detail from that study. Okay. This is a delicate question, feel no obligation to answer it, anyone, please, but are there any old men in the audience who wouldn't mind standing up right now? If so, I'm not going to answer that question, how old. You can define yourself. If so, please stand just for a moment, that we can admire your ears. Thank you, gentlemen. Here's some detail from that study. And here's the winner on the left. He has just been handed his $10 trillion bill. You can see how excited he is. The Ig Nobel Biology Prize was awarded to a team from Japan, Brazil, and Switzerland for their discovery of a female penis and a male vagina in a cave insect. This is the paper in which they describe that discovery. It's called Female Penis, Male Vagina, and Their Correlated Evolution in a Cave Insect. The winners could not travel to the ceremony because they had already scheduled that time to go out into the field and do some more research in a cave. They very kindly filmed, prior to that, an acceptance speech that they gave in a cave. Okay, this is some detail from the paper. Okay, it may not be quite clear to you if you're not familiar with that kind of insect, which pieces are which, but... Right. And here's the acceptance speech.
It's a great honor to receive the Ig Nobel Prize.
We're now exploring some caves this time in Japan. Unfortunately, could not attend the ceremony.
In the study, we reported a sex-reverse cave insects in which females have a penis.
Yes, I peeped their sex life every 30 minutes and found out the females anchor the males by using her spiny penis up to 70 hours.
Every dictionaries around the world express penis as a male structure. Our discovery made billions of dictionaries outdated.
Yeah, so let's explore for other improbable insects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Ig Nobel Prize for Fluid Dynamics was awarded to Ji-won Han of South Korea and the USA. He did this work when he was a high school student in South Korea 2 years ago and published a paper. He was honored for studying the dynamics of liquid sloshing to learn what happens when a person walks backwards while carrying a cup of coffee. This is the paper he published. It's called A Study on the Coffee Spilling Phenomenon in the Low Impulse Regime. By the way, this, or not really by the way at all, very much right down the center of the way, this builds on a paper published about a decade earlier by some physicists in California about what happens when a person walks forwards while carrying a cup of coffee, and those physicists also received an Ig Nobel Prize for that. It's very different, forward and backward. What he discovered was that, the quick story in this, walking forward, no matter who you are, no matter how coordinated, if you're carrying a cup of coffee that's pretty full, you're almost certainly going to spill it because you're going to be doing this rhythmically, and the rhythm will slosh the thing and it's going to spill. Almost impossible to avoid. Walking backwards, that doesn't happen. And it does, for most people, it doesn't happen because walking backwards is something most people don't do easily and do not get into that kind of rhythm so easily, unless you're a highly trained professional dancer, maybe. And he found another way, though. So he said walking backwards, if you want to not spill your coffee, is pretty good, except that there are drawbacks, primarily your likelihood of tripping and falling. But he said a simpler way is to take the cup and hold it from the top, as you see here, and that will keep it from spilling. You might burn your hand from the steam, but so goes it. Here is the winner at the ceremony. And we thought it might be useful to have a quick demonstration here. We have a cup and some liquid. Is there somebody who would be kind enough to come up and demonstrate walking across the stage carrying a cup of liquid? Okay. Somebody person, raise your hand if you are. No? No? Oh, yeah. If you could come right up, great, thanks. And I would ask you to open that bottle. Pour an almost full glass. Great, thank you. And if you could start here, okay. You could say start here and walk across, first forwards. Hold it at arm's length and just walk normally at a reasonable pace. Wow. Let me top that up for you. Come on over here. Oh, just walk. Wow. Is there anyone here who could help us demonstrate? All right. This is the first time I've seen a human being do this with a normal-looking walk. Would you mind walking backwards now? Maybe with your eyes closed? Well, that's plenty. Great. Thank you very much. Would you like this? I'll tell you what, I'll take the glass and that's yours. Thank you. Oop, I just spilled it. All right. Thank you very much for doing that. The Ig Nobel Nutrition Prize was awarded to a team from Brazil, Canada, and Spain for the first scientific report of human blood in the diet of the hairy-legged vampire bat. This is the paper they published called What's for Dinner? First report of human blood in the diet of the hairy-legged vampire bat. And here's the team. They couldn't travel from Brazil, but they made a little video acceptance speech, which I'll show you now.
We have to make a speech to accept this outstanding prize. Fernanda, do you accept the prize? Mm-hmm. Rodrigo, do you accept the prize? Mm-hmm. We do accept the prize.
The Ig Nobel Medicine Prize was awarded to a team from France and the UK, but primarily based in France, for using advanced brain scanning technology to measure the extent to which some people are disgusted by cheese. This is their paper. It's called The Neural Basis of Disgust for Cheese, an fMRI study. They also could not travel, but here is the leader of the research team who made this acceptance speech in his laboratory in France.
In France, we have 1,600 varieties of cheese, but we have shown that 6% of people were disgusted by cheese, a higher number than that found for other foods. In addition, from 1 to 6 members of their family also dislike cheese. The disgust is not only observed in France, but probably in most countries in Europe and in USA. Using a fMRI scanner, we observed that a small brain area activated when we are hungry and stimulated by food odors and images was deactivated in subjects disgusted by cheese. By contrast, 2 other areas involved in aversive behaviors were more activated in these subjects than in subjects liking cheese. In cheese lovers as me, it's a real delight, mainly with a good wine, but you must come to force to experience this. Cheers.
The Ig Nobel Prize for Cognition was awarded to a team from Italy, Spain, and the UK. They were honored for demonstrating that many identical twins cannot tell themselves apart visually. This is the paper in which they describe the details. The paper is called, Is That Me or My Twin? Lack of Self-Face Recognition Advantage in Identical Twins. Are there any identical twins here today? Or anybody who is an identical twin? Would you mind standing up just for a second? I just want to ask you a question. Can you and your twin reliably identify from a photograph which of you is in that photo? Well, thank you. Oh, and another.
As her husband just said, that she once said hello to herself in the mirror.
Well, I can't resist from asking. I have to find out. What did she respond? You can tell me later. Right. Here's some detail from that paper. Yes, those are upside down images. And here are the researchers themselves giving their acceptance speech. You may have seen in previous pictures and see here, there's a man who is almost naked and painted silver, and perhaps you're wondering, why is he there? And some other related questions. His name is Jim Brett. He is a human spotlight. We always have two of them at the ceremony. They hold a flashlight, a torch, and their job is to illuminate the proceedings. Jim Brett has a doctorate, has a PhD from MIT. He invents things, and in his lifetime, he's invented, at least to my knowledge, two great things. One of them is this concept of the human spotlight. The other is, Jim Brett is one of the people who invented something called 3D printing, three-dimensional printing. Okay, same person. At the ceremony, right after the acceptance speech for this twins prize, we had a little demonstration. These are two doctors from Harvard Medical School who are identical twins, and we took this photo, and then we asked them to identify it. And as with the experience of the twin up here, they couldn't do it. And finally, the obstetrics prize, the Ig Nobel Prize for Obstetrics, first time we've ever given a prize in this field, was awarded to a team from Spain. They were honored for showing that a developing human fetus responds more strongly to music that's played electromechanically inside the mother's vagina than to music that's played electromechanically on the mother's belly. They produced this film, which they say explains quite clearly everything they were about. And in case that's not a clear enough explanation, they also published this academic paper called Fetal Facial Expression in Response to Intravaginal Music Emission. Here's a graphic demonstration. They also have a product, which they're selling, called Baby Pod. They told me that they, in order to keep the development costs low, they managed to adapt some existing technology that previously was used in a sex toy. And this is Baby Pod. You can get this online quite easily, and I'm told it makes a lovely gift. And here are the winners, and the winner who's in the middle is the ringleader of, she runs this clinic. It's a fertility clinic, and it was her idea, and she shepherded this whole thing into existence. And at the end of the ceremony every year, we ask all of the winners and all of the Nobel laureates who are there and all the other people on stage to gather for a pointless photo opportunity. That's what you see here. And I want to show you quickly just one other thing. Every year, the ceremony includes a lot of other stuff that happens very quickly, jammed in between the introduction of these 10 winners. One of the things is that every year, we write a little opera about something in science. It's funny, we hope, and it's performed by professional opera singers and by the Nobel Prize winners who happen to be there in non-singing roles. And this year, the opera was about incompetence. And I'm going to show you just a little piece of it. I think it more or less explains itself. It was called the Incompetence Opera, and a lot of it was based on the paper that won an Ig Nobel Prize 16 years ago, whatever. That paper, I'll remind you, it's called Unskilled and Unaware of It, How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. The two psychologists who wrote this paper are named Dunning and Kruger. If you watch news reports, especially news reports about politics or government in the US in the last year, you'll see this phrase, the Dunning-Kruger effect, used more and more often. This is what it comes from. It comes from this paper. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. I'm going to show you just a piece of the final song from the opera, in which a psychologist explains the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Dunning-Kruger Psychologists have shown that people unskilled at something somehow do not know their own incompetence. No! Incompetence. Some people's own incompetence somehow gives them a stupid sense that anything they do is first rate. They think it's great. But no, it's not.
Anyway, that's it's a little piece of it. If you want to see the whole opera and, in fact, the whole ceremony, go to our website. There's video there, improbable.com. The next Ig Nobel ceremony will be next September at Harvard. It'll be the 28th first annual Ig Nobel Prize ceremony. You're all invited. If you can't travel, I hope you'll watch the live webcast. And if you know somebody who deserves an Ig Nobel Prize, please let us know about it. All right. I also want to remind you that our magazine comes out every 2 months, and it's full of reports, citations mostly, of scientific and other academic and other research reports that have this quality of making people laugh and then think. Okay, so that's my part of the evening. I'm now going to introduce, and I have the honor of introducing, 3 living Ig Nobel Prize winners and a 4th person whose work contributed to a prize. Now, each of them has a set amount of time. We want this to go quickly. To help them, we do not have a little girl, but we have an equivalent way of assisting them to know how time is passing. We need 2 people to help us as timers, and I wonder if there would be 2 people who could come up as volunteers and just sit up here and help time. We need one person who has a watch or something with a clock in it, and somebody else who has a good loud voice. Is there somebody here who knows how to tell time and has a timing device? Would you like to come up? Yeah, you. And is there somebody here who has a good loud voice? Wouldn't mind using it? Just wave your arm so I can pick you out from the crowd if so. It's got to be. Okay. Somebody over here? Okay, yeah. Please come up here. And I'll explain how it's going to work. If the timer could sit here. Okay, I'll explain that in a second. And if our enunciator could come and sit in the other chair. The Ig Nobel winners each will have 10 minutes, and the other speaker will have 5 minutes. Every 2 minutes, we're going to notify them, so that's the key thing. Okay, 10 minutes total for the speaker. Yep. Okay. And don't get distracted now. We're going to notify the speaker every 2 minutes. So what we need you to do is, when they start speaking, start timing, and every 2 minutes, you're going to notify this gentleman. All right. And you will notify the speaker each time. Can you make an imitation of a cat sound? A cat.
Yes.
Would you do it?
No.
No, please. Yes, please.
Meow.
Meow. Maybe good. Using your loud voice.
Meow.
Good. Well, let's walk through it once. So after 2 minutes, if you would notify him any way you like. So after 2 minutes, please demonstrate. After 2 minutes, okay. And if you would.
Meow.
Okay. After 4 minutes, if you would notify him, and then do it twice. So. Twice. 2 times. If you could do that now, please.
Meow, meow.
Meow, meow, okay. After another 2 minutes, 3 times. Maybe punch him 3 times, gently, but 3 times, 3 meows.
Meow, meow, meow.
Okay. After another 2 minutes, this is after 8 minutes, 4 times.
I'm going. Go. Meow, meow, meow,
Okay.
meow, meow.
And after 10 minutes, notify him. And at the end of 10 minutes, just keep meowing until the person stops talking. Okay? All right. Our first speaker has already been introduced to you, as have the others. He is a professor here at the University of Manchester. He is the only individual who has an individual Ig Nobel Prize and an individual Nobel Prize. He lost his Ig Nobel Prize, and I have grudgingly brought a replacement, which will be presented to him before his talk tonight. Please welcome Professor Andre Geim. First, I would like to present you with this ceremonial glass of water. Thank you. Okay. Would you like to touch a glass of water that's been drunk by a Nobel Prize?
Yeah,
I didn't think so. All right. I had to bring this from the United States in the cramped space available in an airplane, and I didn't want it to get damaged, so it's disassembled. And my condition for giving you this replacement is that you have to assemble it here on stage.
Well, that's a challenge, yeah.
Here's one part. Here's another part. Here's this goes on the top. This goes on the bottom.
Oh, gee, man.
And this is some super glue.
No, I value it too much to assemble it here. Yeah, okay, that's approximately it.
Okay,
It's
well,
good.
all
It's
right.
good. Okay.
All right, well,
Okay.
now you know the quality of his work. Please,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's okay. We can do it. We can do it some other time. And you're going to speak about the work that won you an Ig Nobel Prize. Oh, and I brought you some of the printed programs from this year's Ig Nobel
Okay,
Ceremony.
thank you. Yeah.
So, and that's it. Would you like some more water?
No more.
Good. Okay. Professor
Okay.
Andre Geim.
So, as it's supposed to be light-hearted, not scientific talk, I started as usual in fairy tales. Once upon a time, on a dark Friday night, I had a glass of beer. And I thought that it was about 20 years ago, and I thought, what can I do with our old magnets, which we have and no one knows what to do with those? Magnets, they consume a lot of electricity, and it was a challenge for me for the previous 3-5 years what to do with those magnets. So I thought, would it be interesting to put water inside them? It's an expensive scientific equipment, but all right, okay, you can sacrifice something in this life. So it was kind of a random experiment which I have done, but let me assure you that it was only one glass of beer, and there was some background underneath that. So I heard about so-called magnetic descalers, where you put a small magnet around your water pipe, and then suddenly all this calcination disappears. I can't contribute anything scientifically into this subject, but 20 years ago I just took a bottle of water, pour it inside, and even after a glass of beer I didn't expect anything dramatic happen. It was not the case, and one of a sudden there was a water levitating somewhere in the middle, somewhere, can I show you? somewhere here at this point. What you see, you look from the top and there is a ball like tennis ball, and a green line shaded on this tennis ball, and this levitates very beautifully. I happen to be well educated, so I didn't think for a moment that it was an anti-gravity machine. So it took me some time, probably between 3 to 20 minutes, as far as I remember, to figure out that it's just diamagnetism. It's just like magnetism, but very, very, very weak, which is commonly present everywhere, but we just don't notice it. Every one of us is slightly diamagnetic. And then I thought, that's it, 20 years ago. It was my peaceful night after that, and a few more beers, and the problem came around next morning when I tried to tell my colleagues that, you know, water levitates inside our old magnets, and no one believed me. And then I have to show them that this is true. And they told someone else outside our department, and they don't believe them. And then those colleagues came through, and those came those, and those came those, and eventually half of the world traveled to our lab to watch levitation. Okay, of course, you know, academics are brilliant people, and they came with many of their brilliant ideas. What else can be levitated inside, and so on. So we tried everything which was there. So, but at some moment you get bored, and because you get bored, you think how to get rid of those. And to get rid of those, you need to levitate something what everyone would remember and forget very, very quickly. So we found an object for that. That's a frog, as you heard from our chairman. And that time there were no mobile phones, YouTube, and etc. So a TV crew came around and saw this little poor frog levitating. Don't worry, the frog survived the experience. It was returned to the biology department after that, with consequences still unknown. The trouble started when this picture appears in the media. And this was a tiny, tiny bit 20 years ago, what I have to experience. And if you don't like English, you can find your own language somewhere among those things. So it was a lot of fun. And because knowledge is fun, you try to extend, maybe not knowledge, but at least your fun during this knowledge. So during the next few years, I tried to extend my experience, and this is one of the papers I published on the subject. Obviously here there is levitation, there is diamagnetic, and etc., strong magnetic fields, but very special about this paper is not its title, not its journal, but the second author. So as you see, a very cute animal, and we call him Tisha, and frogs can levitate, hamsters can levitate. Of course, it survived. My wife loved this animal so much that after that, still for 20 years, we still have a stream of animals in our house, even now. Okay, so people sometimes ask me, why did I put the hamster on the paper? And I have to be honestly say, this person contributed directly in those levitation experiments and helped me more than any of my colleagues during that time. There was another fun around this one. People who know about levitation and etc., they are not really surprised that you can compensate gravity by this one. But for those in the audience who know so-called Earnshaw theorem, it tells you about stability. It's easily to levitate water, to lift water, but levitate, it's not that easy. And there is a very powerful theorem, which is called Earnshaw theorem, which essentially says you can't levitate magnets. They would just move away or drop or jump. Try 2 magnets, try 1,000 magnets, you wouldn't be able to do this. And the Feynman's lectures are quite well known, and this is theorem in Feynman's lectures. So, but when you know subject really well, you can do something like that. In this particular experiment, you have a magnet which is stably levitated in air, and the reason why it levitates is the very book of Feynman, where there is theorem about that it's impossible. Some people say that must be a joke combination and etc. I'm not going to explain how I have done, but you can read it in one of the most prestigious journals, Nature, where I manage one of those few who can manage to show a finger to my colleagues from the pages of scientific journals. So this is magnet, and it's levitated due to the diamagnetism of my fingers. So was it all waste of time? Self-indulgence of someone like my that? Okay, I'll accept the answer yes, but to be honest, perception changed. Sometimes at the conference, people come around and say, "Oh, well, I have no idea what graphene is, but your frog." Well, that's something. And if you are still not persuaded that there is some sense behind Ig Nobel Prizes as well, which I consider the second most prestigious award in humor on this planet, I'll try to persuade you with this letter. The letter is from a 9-year-old girl from Alaska, and it says, "I'm very interested with an error, and I like to know how your frog floats, and I want to become a scientist." And I rest my case. What? Should I?
We just did.
Okay.
We have time for just, that was beautiful. Just a few questions, and I would like to ask the first one, which is hanging in the air. You said this is the second most important prize in the world for things that are funny. All right, what is the first?
What do you think? Nobel Peace Prize, of course, yeah. Sorry.
If you have a question to ask, please raise your arm right now, and somebody will bring a microphone nearby. And I tell you, people with a microphone, when you get to somebody, would you scream so that we can tell where you are? Yeah, thanks.
Do academic physicists get suspended near mutilated cryogenic magnets when full of beer?
Mark.
Yes, as he's saying, I do, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. You don't get that many chances to ask this man questions where he's willing to answer.
Is there a weight limit to the frog? Could you make a cat float?
Yeah. Is there a weight limit to what you could levitate? Could a cat float?
Yeah, very easily. There were some volunteers to be levitated, including myself, but my face didn't fit inside this magnet. But then NASA scientists calculated that it's possible to levitate even a human being, and they applied even for a funding from Tallahassee to make a big magnet to fit a human inside. So it's feasible. Unfortunately, you need something like a nuclear power station to provide enough energy for this magnet, but this was estimated. So yeah, so no problem with that. Yeah.
Okay. We have a question right here. And if you yourself do try to levitate a cat, would you mind taking pictures for us?
My question is, with these cryogenic magnets,
those were not cryogenic.
Oh.
Those were just water-cooled magnets. It's a coil like this, and there is electricity supplies, which requires energy about what the university consumes just right now to levitate this frog. Yeah, so very simple.
Would it be a problem with patients having MRI scans? Would they be floating off the bed?
Yeah, it requires a gradient, but people have joking about this. Let's see, if you make a big enough magnet with a big enough gradient, you put patient inside and it goes outside. So no, you need those magnets in the hospital. They have a very gradual distribution of magnetic field, so you wouldn't notice any force acting on those patients. And the strength is actually similar. These days people use 8 Tesla magnets. We use only 16 Tesla in some experiments.
Okay, thanks. If you have further questions, you can stick around afterwards and possibly get them answered. But thank you, Andre
Okay,
Geim.
thank you.
I am a visitor to your land. I come from across the sea, as you probably can tell from the way I sound. And could we switch to the other? Yeah. I noticed in a local product the influence of Andre Geim's work with the frog. This is the local product. Okay. And this is on the side of the box, which, oh, come on. It appears to me to be certified worth drinking or worth using with levitating frogs. So if anyone has further information about that, I would love to hear it. Our next speaker won an Ig Nobel Prize in the field of mathematics 3 years ago. She's professor at the University of Vienna. I don't want to go into the details of her work because she can tell it far better than I. Please welcome Dr. Elisabeth Obertzaucher.
I'm sorry I didn't bring any cat food to bribe you. Good evening. I won an Ig Nobel Prize in mathematics for this study, the case of Muley Ismail, fact or fancy. This study might sound like something very crazy, but I hope that I will make you think at the end of my talk. When I talk about fertility, and I do this a lot, I talk to my freshman students, I talk to fertility experts. I like to ask them, what do you think is necessary in order to create offspring, in order to sire a child? How many copulations are necessary? And interestingly, the answers are very similar but very distinct too from those two groups of people. The fertility experts will say, well, 1, if you're very lucky. The students, freshman students, will say 1, if you're very unlucky. Of course, this is a difficult question, and the term luck actually highlights what this is all about, because we actually have a problem to highlight the exact number of copulations that are necessary. And this is actually why we did this study. We tried to access this problem from the opposite end. And now the question would be, why is this interesting at all? Well, this is because it's a really fundamental question. Because the different reproductive potential of men and women is a very fundamental assumption that affects every theory, every hypothesis we have in evolutionary psychology and behavioral studies. And there are differences. So I will start with the limit on the female side. It's an interesting study. It's the first wife of Fyodor Vasilyev, a Russian man who married more than once. And she supposedly had 69 children. That's incredible. I always, this number boggles my mind. It's not 69 pregnancies. There were quadruplets, quints, triplets, and twins. I think there was one single birth. That makes it a bit easier, but still, it's a crazy number. But the thing is, this is far beyond what we perceive as the limits of female potential. But in our textbooks it says, well, female reproductive output or potential is rather limited. But on the other hand, male reproductive potential, and that's what's written in some of our textbooks, is unlimited. Think about that. Not even the number of copulations you can have are unlimited. How would you have unlimited number of offspring? So there is one man who made it into the Guinness Book of World Records, and that's the guy. It's Mulay Ismail, who is cited in the Guinness Book of World Records with 888 children. So when you read such a number as a biologist, you start mistrusting this number because it's too beautiful. In German, we have a name for this kind of number. It's Schnapszahl. It's a liquor number. That's something Andre might come up with late at night in his lab, maybe. But when he tested, he probably wouldn't come up with such a beautiful number. So what we did was we started to look for actually some sources that would bring us some more reliable information. And we actually found a report, a historical report by a French ambassador, Dominique Busnot, who wrote about Mulay Ismail. And he reported that he had 600 sons in 1704. 600 sons. There is a reason why he talked about the sons only, and we might assume that this has something to do with him just, basing some importance on the men, and women were not important. But the actual reason is that Mulay was the bloodthirsty for many reasons, but the worst reason, in my eyes, was that the daughters of his concubines were not allowed to live. They were killed at birth. He also fought wars, was very nasty to his wives and concubines, and so on and so on. But that actually means the 600 sons were there, but the daughters, of course, had to be born. So it comes down to roughly 1,200 children that had to be sired in a period of 32 years from him coming into power until the moment when Dominique Busnot wrote his report in 1704. That's 32 years period of reproduction. And we asked whether it's possible, and that's actually a discussion, a discourse in science, whether it is possible for a man to have this many children. Who thinks that this is possible? Who thinks this is too many? Who thinks, oh, there is much more to be had if a man just keeps at it? Okay. So we actually generated a computer model, and we introduced all the variables we found literature on that affect human fertility. And in this computer model, we calculated how many copulations would be necessary for men to sire that many offspring? How many times a day would he have had to have sex to sire 600 sons, 1,200 children? So we came to the conclusion that actually once or twice a day would have been enough, which doesn't sound too much or too many copulations. If you start thinking a bit more about it, it might actually sound a bit different. If you think about 2 copulations a day, every day, no weekends, no holidays, 32 years, that becomes work. The other question we asked, and that's actually maybe the most interesting part, is how many women does a man need? Because he had a huge harem, and that's the first answer. Well, with this huge harem, no problem. Of course he will do that. Well, it turns out he had 500 women in his harem, according to Busnot. And we calculated whether this many women are actually necessary. We calculated how the size of the harem affects the number of offspring. And look at that. It's actually a far lower number would have sufficed to generate that many offspring. So between 70 or 110, depending on the mathematical model we put at the basis of it. The number of offspring levels off, doesn't increase anymore even after adding more women to the harem. And I think this is the feminist part of the whole thing. Because that actually means that the limit of his reproductive potential is not the number of women he can actually keep to himself, which actually is also written in our textbooks. But the limit is actually his fertility, his stamina. So one might ask, why did he have this huge harem? Why did he kill off his daughters? And I think those two are related. But here, I'm going outside biology, so I'm starting to speculate. And I think this has something to do with politics. By withdrawing that many women from the mating pool, he generated a huge overflow of unmated men. And those unmarried men were very, very, very useful for his other hobby, which was fighting wars. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. What questions do you have for Dr. Oberzacher? Raise your arm. Yeah. Question back, question here, question here.
I understand, but I may be wrong, that if you copulate frequently, a man's sperm count goes down. Did you make allowances for that in the calculations?
That's actually where we came to the conclusion that he is the limit. So whenever a man copulates, whenever a man ejaculates, he loses sperm. And this loss of sperm has to be replaced. And this, of course, happens with a certain speed. And to our knowledge, the 2 copulations a day are actually about that limit you can do on a regular basis without reducing your sperm count to a level where your fertility actually suffers.
There's a gentleman here, and there are some other questions in the back. Again, someone with a microphone, if you hand the microphone to somebody, just scream so we know where you are and we can pay attention.
That was a very interesting presentation. Would you like to make any comments about the relative merits of practical and theoretical science?
I repeatedly have people coming up after a talk about this, volunteering to participate in my next study.
Okay, next question.
A well-known second person. Who was the second most reproductive person?
Oh, you're referring to Genghis Khan? Is it that? So Genghis Khan is actually reported on a lot in scientific literature because he and his male relatives are responsible for actually being the ancestors of 5% of the Asian population, which is incredible, it's insane. But he didn't do it all by himself. He had help by his brothers and cousins. That's the other big and interesting or most famous story. And then there is a Dutch doctor who used a different strategy, because we're talking here natural insemination through copulation. There was this Dutch doctor who used a different strategy back in the early days when artificial insemination was very young. And he used his own sperm, and he supposedly had something like 200 children through that method. There is a wonderful piece of literature. It's Milan Kundera who wrote about that in one of his novels.
Okay, we have time for one more question. There were a number of arms waving before. All right, well, now we don't have time even for one, but if you have further questions, we'll be around at least briefly afterwards. Thank you very much, Dr. Obagawa.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is not himself an Ig Nobel Prize winner, but his work was used to produce an Ig Nobel Prize, and he will tell us about that. He will have 5 minutes to speak. So let's notify him every minute, 5 times, so only 5 minutes this time. He's also a graduate of the University of Manchester, and he was very kind in agreeing to my pressure to come and do this talk. And I'd like to very much thank and welcome Tom Williamson. Tom?
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I created the website Wisdom of Chopra, which ended up being used in a study which went on to win an Ig Nobel Prize. So to start off with, I need to introduce this man. Does anyone know who this guy is? This is Deepak Chopra, who is a multi-millionaire author on things like health, alternative medicine, and he's got some very strange views on consciousness and quantum physics. So his big breakthrough was in 1993 with Ageless Body, Timeless Mind, the quantum/practical alternative to growing old, depending on which version you read. Just give you a little bit from it here. Chasing the physical structure of the body down to its ultimate source dead ends as molecules give way to atoms, atoms to subatomic particles, and these particles to ghosts of energy dissolving into an empty void. This void is mysteriously imprinted with information even before any information is expressed. Just as thousands of words exist silently in your memory without being spoken, the quantum field holds the entire universe in unexpressed form. There. Everyone understood that? Right, so Deepak Chopra's contributions to quantum physics earned him an Ig Nobel Prize in 1998. And he's had a fair few Twitter spats with the University of Manchester's very own Professor Brian Cox. There's just a little sample of it there for you. But Deepak Chopra and Twitter are a marriage made in heaven, because he puts out so many of his quotes, his deepties, if you will. So he says things like, our perception as a species experience non-fundamental reality, which is formless being. And we all go, ah. Fundamental reality is a field of infinite possibilities and a formless void. It is also your core being. And we all go, ooh. And finally, matter is not stuff, but a non-material activity in a field of infinite possibilities. The universe is a verb, not a noun. And we all go, what? So So a friend of mine was looking at these tweets, and he thought, is this guy, is he just got a list of words that he's just picking from and sticking them together? And I thought, I'm a web developer, I know how to program, I could put that to the test. So I made wisdomofchopra.com. Very, very simple. It's got 4 lists of words, roughly in that structure, and they're all put together using a sort of fruit machine process of string concatenation. And it comes up with stuff like, the cosmos embraces an abundance of space-time events, and we all go, ah. Imagination arises and subsides in species-specific observations, and we all go, ooh. And finally, the unexplainable is in the midst of boundless chaos. And you'll go, what? So we had a good laugh with that, and I did the rounds on various websites, and then thought very little of it. 3 years later, I wake up to a very full inbox, people saying, God, read the news, and I read headlines like, people who post inspirational quotes have lower levels of intelligence, study finds. Scientists find a link between low intelligence and acceptance of pseudo-profound bullshit, and study finds people who fall for nonsense inspirational quotes are less intelligent. You might even recognize the subheading. The unexplainable is in the midst of boundless chaos. So, being a good scientist, good skeptic, looked up the paper, and it's called this, On the Reception of and Detection of Pseudo-Profound Bullshit by Gordon Pennycricket. And of course, first I thought, oh, they've used my website. I wonder what they make of it. Wisdomofchopra.com constructs meaning statements with appropriate syntactic structure by randomly mashing together a list of words used in Deepak Chopra's tweets. And I thought, okay, it didn't take me much work to make the website, but mash together, come on. So I thought, oh, right, I'll go back into the code. There you go. So now it literally matches things together. So anyway, back to the paper. Right, now they very carefully distinguish bullshit and lying. So a liar cares about the truth. So if you ask a kid, did you brush your teeth? And the kid goes, yeah. Then the kid cares about the truth. Whereas a bullshitter does not care. I'm so tempted to put a picture of Trump up there, but might beat me to it. I was so tempted, sorry, repeat myself. So the bullshitter does not care about the truth, they are only there to impress. And my website, wisdomofchopra.com, did not care about the truth, and it was only there to impress. So I invented a bullshit engine. I was very impressed by that. But the authors of the paper did not care about the bullshitter, they cared about people receiving the bullshit or the bullshitty. So very quickly, because I'm running out of time, this is how they did it. They took a wisdomofchopra.com quote and asked people how profound is it. And if they asked answer 1, that's not at all profound, 5, very profound. The big conclusion is that people who found these quotes profound also had lower levels of intelligence. So there's the press release, and there they are winning the 2016 Ig Nobel Prize. And so very quickly, that's the end of my talk. So very quickly, I just want to say, if you've got an idea, like wisdomofchopra.com, if you think it's really silly or it's daft, whatever, just get it out there, because you never know what's going to happen. You might even contribute to winning an Ig Nobel Prize. Thank you.
I have a request in your question. Could you, following the lead of Deepak Chopra, who, by the way, also is an Ig Nobel Prize winner, you can look up why, but it very much pertains to this, to honor him as well as the work of Tom Williamson, if you ask a question, could you somewhere in your question include the word quantum? Now, what question? Raise your arm if you have a question. Over here.
Yeah.
Here?
Hi. How ethical is it for them to use your website and to cite your website without telling you? Did you find it quite funny, or were you quantum pissed off?
Yeah, that's a slightly personal question, but yeah, I was surprised more than anything, but just happy to know that someone had used my work, if you want to call it that, and yeah, that it brought joy to people and it won a prize and it made people laugh. So yeah, it would have been nice to have a proper scientific citation rather than just having my website described as a site that mashes words together. But There we are.
Okay. Next question.
Do you think this is something specific to Deepak Chopra, or if you did it with anybody's tweets, such as, say, Professor Brian Cox's, you'd end up with equally valid and meaningfully quantum set of quotes?
Well, the thing with Wisdom of Chopra is how quickly people go, oh yeah, they really do look like Deepak Chopra's tweets. If you did it with someone like Brian Cox, it'd just be quite boring because you'd just end up with a load of factual statements. It'd say things like, quantum physics is really hard, and if you disagree with me, you're a knobber, something like that, which would just be true.
Okay, one more question. Up in the back.
Have you ever found that the website produces more sense than Chopra himself, quantumly speaking?
Occasionally, I look at it and I think, oh wow, that really is quite deep. Accidentally deep. The deepest thing I've ever seen it say is a single particle explores quantum chaos. That took me back a little bit.
I have a question. Deepak Chopra has written and published many books that made a lot of money, made a lot of other book publishers eager to publish such books. Has any book publisher offered a contract to your website?
Sadly not. I should also mention that the authors use another generator by a guy called Seb Pierce, and that creates whole paragraphs. So maybe he's got the book deal, I don't know.
Okay. Tom Williamson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our final speaker won the Ig Nobel Prize for Biology in the year 2003. His whole story about this is a good example of what can happen if you pay attention to things around you. He noticed something unusual one day, and eventually he wrote it up to tell the world, and then a lot of things happened as a consequence of that. Had he not been paying attention, and had he not decided to tell anybody, so many wonderful things that are going on right now would simply not exist. He is the director of the Natural History Museum in Rotterdam. Please welcome Kees Moeliker.
Thank you. This is the Natural History Museum where I've been working for the past 30 years. It's a classic natural history museum. It has a collection of fossils, insects, plants, stuffed birds. And a couple of years ago, to be precisely in 1995, the museum got a new wing, a glass extension to the building. And this glass extension proved to be very, very profitable for the collection, especially for the bird collection, because birds don't understand the concept of glass. They fly into the building and get killed. We try to prevent that by putting these stickers on the glass, but you have to put them every 10 centimeter, and the architect didn't really like this idea, so we didn't do that. And I decided to collect all the birds from the site and give them a spot in our collection. And then it became fun for me. And back in those years, I developed the absolute ear for the sounds birds make when they crash into the building. And on June 5th, 1995, at 5 to 6 in the afternoon, I heard a tremendous loud bang against my office window, and I looked out of the window and I saw this. The bird that made the bang was a mallard, It's lying there dead, but next to the dead duck was a live duck. And then this happened. The live duck mounted the dead duck and started to copulate. Well, I'm a biologist, I'm an ornithologist. I said one is dead, one is alive. There's copulation, there's necrophilia. If you look carefully, you see both of them are of the male sex. Homosexual necrophilia. I didn't read that in my textbook, so I took a chair, took my notebook and my camera, and I started observing this behavior. I could do so because this took 75 minutes. I observed it 75 minutes, because after that I got hungry, I wanted to go home. I'd taken my notes and my pictures, so I went outside to check and to collect the dead duck. And I checked the sex of the dead duck. It was indeed of the male sex. Here is a rare picture of a duck's penis. Are you aware of genital morphology in ducks, birds in general? Well, there are 10,000 bird species around the world. Only 300 possess a penis, among which the ducks. There are other features. These are ducks' testicles, but you have to go inside to check for that. Or here are my notes from that beautiful June afternoon back in 1995, and I kept my notes to myself in my drawer for the next 6 years. I couldn't publish, although I knew I'd seen something new. I didn't have the framework. In the end, 6 years later, I published the first case of homosexual necrophilia in the mallard duck. It's a 3-page case report. Here is the situation again. A is my office, B is where the duck hit the glass, and C is from where I observed it. And here are the ducks again. Well, you know, when you publish something in science, 6 or 7 people read it and then it's forgotten, it's history. And so was my paper. But 2 years later, in 2003, I got an email from somebody at Harvard University telling me I'd won a prize. An Ig Nobel Prize. I said, hey, that's interesting. I'd never won a prize. So I started a conversation and, well, I said yes. And I went to the ceremony, and it's my pleasure to present to you here in, it's the second time he's in Manchester. Here is the duck. You can come to me afterwards for a photo opportunity. After winning this Ig Nobel in 2003, my life changed quite a bit. People started sending me all kinds of duck-related stuff. I have a huge collection. But more importantly, people started sending me observations of remarkable animal behavior. And I've said it before and I will say it here. If an animal behaves somewhere on this planet, I know about it. And I'll give you some examples. This is back in the US. This is a mating mistake. A moose trying to copulate with a bronze statue of a bison. This is back in the Netherlands a couple of years ago. This is a frog trying to copulate with a goldfish. Here is a frog trying to copulate with a dead turtle. This is not really uncommon for frogs. Now we come to avian necrophilia. This is the gold crest. This is the smallest bird we have in Europe. This was a window victim also. This is a turkey. This is straight heterosexual necrophilia. The one below is a female. This is in the US a couple of years ago. And here we have cane toads in Australia. Well, necrophilia in frogs and toads is pretty common because when they're excited, they copulate with almost anything. What is very special in this image is the position. The missionary position is very, very rare in the animal kingdom. Here are the 7 positions known in frogs and toads, and you see, no missionary position. And the story continues. Here's another case of heterosexual necrophilia in mallards. This is in downtown Antwerp with about 300 spectators. And here is the moment I've been waiting for 20 years, the second case of homosexual necrophilia. March last year in my hometown of Rotterdam. Here is the act. Everybody has a mobile phone, so they just film it. It's beautiful. I got many photos. And of course, this duck made it also into the collection. And it's now part of a famous collection we have in the Natural History Museum called the Dead Animal Tales series. And it's there together with other famous animals. So if you're in Rotterdam, please come and visit. So to conclude, I'd like to invite you all to Dead Duck Day. It's on June 5th, the day the duck crashed against the museum, at 5 to 6 in the afternoon. We gather at the memorial sign. Here is the memorial sign. This is the spot. Here's the story. The duck. That's good. Applause. Now there are 2 ducks. This is last year. The 2 ducks come out of the museum. I say a few words to commemorate their tragic death. But more importantly, we try to find ways and to try to discuss ways with people to prevent birds from colliding with glass buildings. This is a global problem that has billions of casualties every year, and that should stop. More and more people come to Dead Duck Day every year. We have a fashion line. And after the ceremony, we go to the local Chinese restaurant where they have a 6-course duck dinner. So, if you like ducks, if you like nature, be there at June 5th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kees. Is there anyone who dares to ask a question? Please raise your arm if so.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask you, are you sure that the ducks weren't just trying to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, a gentle heart massage for their friend, their buddy?
I understand your question. It's usually the first reaction they see that they try to reanimate, but it's not really happening. What's actually happening is a reaction to a position that is normal for copulation in ducks, in any bird or any animal, and it's not the way you think as a human, as a necrophiliac. It's not. They're not perverts. They're not perverts. There's one.
Sorry.
Where are you? Okay. Hi.
The title of your work is quite specific. It's homosexual necrophilia in mallard ducks. Does that imply that there's been observations of straight necrophilia in mallard ducks or homosexual necrophilia in other animals?
Yes, there are. My files already contain about 66 cases in birds alone of heterosexual necrophilia, and it goes from frogs to whales and everything in between. Yeah.
You have the stuffed duck with you. Whenever you brought that to the taxidermist, how did the conversation go for you to?
I didn't hear it. Sorry.
When you bring them to the taxidermist, How does the conversation go?
Oh, there's another one.
In your original notes, you had a set of tick marks, what you're observing. I have to know, what were you counting?
During copulation, the one on top, obviously, pecks the other one. It's the pecking behavior that I'm counting. Yeah, it's useless, but I was... my teachers taught me to count, and I counted.
Okay, one more question.
It's all from there.
Is it always the male of the species that initializes this behavior? Have you seen any female ducks or species that try this on?
In ducks, it's only mallards so far. But I think it's because mallards are pretty close to humans, pretty common ducks, so they can be seen everywhere. And of course, this also relates to the dramatic death of all these victims. When you're out in the marshes or in the fields and you die alone, things like this won't happen. When you're a duck.
Yeah. If you have further questions, you can either come up here immediately after, or you can privately send a message by email to Kees at the museum, and he will, I'm sure, be happy to answer your question. So, Kees Mulliker.
Thank you.
Well, that's everything that we've come here to tell you for beginning tonight. I'd like to ask each of our speakers all of our speakers to please come up here, and we're going to have a pointless photo opportunity, which will also include our reliable timers. And perhaps Nancy Rothwell will join us. Great.
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was not going to fly. Gentlemen? And yeah, we've never done this before, but we'll try to launch paper airplanes in a synchronized way. Oh, okay. And don't throw it. We're going to do it 3, 2, 1, throw. So wait. So, right. And if you really want to, you can throw at the same time, and we can assault this poor photographer here who's kindly sitting there. What's your name in case you're not able to speak it? Yeah. Okay. 3, 2, 1, launch. Andre Gein, Elizabeth Obertaucher, Tom Williamson, Kees Mulliker, and I'm Mark Abrams. Thank you. Special thanks to Nancy Rothwell for inviting us. Jo Cowan and her staff did a lot of work to put this night together. Joe, if you wouldn't mind standing up and taking a bow. And Kate, and the people who did the AV work. And also whoever years ago was the model for this. So thank you very, very much. Good night.
Thank you very much, Mark, Andre, Elizabeth, Kees, and Tom for what was promised to be, and I think was, a fascinating and entertaining evening. I hope you will now go away, chuckle a little, and think as well. Thank you all very much for coming. If you'll let our speakers just move out, and then please move downstairs for the reception, and thank you all so much for coming.